Hey guys, what's up? It is prime time here. Oh, I said my name again. Alright, in the top right-ish side, as the blue Protoss, it's prime time! Hey guys, what's up? And in the bottom right-ish side of Antigua Shipyard, we have the red Terran low battery. Now, I already reviewed this game, or I shouldn't say reviewed, I already recorded myself giving analysis to this game, and then the file wouldn't upload to YouTube, so here I am at it again, round 2, and one thing I want to quickly mention is, you see these mineral patches right here? How they're further back than like this one? At the beginning of the game, try to tell your probes to mine from these, not these. You can see I have 2 here, 1 here, and then like none on this one, and whatnot. Anyway, it's not a big deal, but I figured I might as well mention this. So anyway, let's get into the actual point in this video, and that of course is the PvT strategy, one specific build order that I've sort of created and used on ladder quite a bit. And this is actually going to be the 3rd episode of this PvT series. There will be probably 2 more after this, so since I've pretty much already covered the build order, I'm sort of going to speed through these intros for these upcoming videos, and then just sort of show you the follow-ups and different scenarios and things like that you can encounter while trying to do these builds. So, just a quick reminder, I suppose, Gateway 13, double gas on 16, Cyber on 16 or 17. The thing is, with the Cyber, I guess I might as well say this, if you don't scout for whatever reason, although I do think you should, you can get the Cyber on 17, but if you do scout, then you sort of have to get it on 16. Not a big deal, but I figured I'd mention it. So, it is pretty important to kill the scouting workers, because if they stay in the base with their worker, then you sort of have to delay your robo facility, or you sort of you just what am I saying? Just put it down and let them see it. Essentially, is what's going to happen. So it looks like our opponent decided to get an expansion a little bit before the 4-minute mark. He got it started at that time. And that's that might seem early, but that's actually pretty standard. And then if you see your opponent doing that, they're probably going to follow it up with barracks, because if they don't, they're going to be pretty vulnerable for a few minutes after they put down the command center. So you can expect bio play coming up after this barracks, after the command center. Good thing I caught that one. But as usual, the robo facility is now coming down, so I'm going to quickly throw down the Robo Bay as fast as I humanly can, and then also start the Observer. The reason you get the Observer first is A, you don't want them to scout out the Warp Prism by some chance, and B, you just simply can't afford the Warp Prism to start production that early. So it's that simple. No difficult science behind it. And then you do want to get your second gateway when you can afford it. Don't rush the second gateway, because at the very worst, you don't want to just simply stop your Zealot production for a while. Like right now you can see I have 2, but that's actually not bad, and the reason for that is because this warp gate's going to finish up, and then I can just build a 3rd one out of the warp gate instead of the gateway. Or you can just build 3 out of the gateway and then turn it into a warp gate and just build like a stalker after that. Once again, we're going to see some early marine pressure. Now, in the first game I believe we saw this not work out too well, but we're going to see what happens here. This is hitting quite a bit earlier though, I want to mention, I believe. No, it's actually hitting, yeah, it is hitting a little bit earlier. So I'm going to have the 3 Zealots in a Sentry instead of a Colossus by the time he gets to my base. And you can see I'm trying to hide my Warp Prism while he is attacking. Now, what you want to do right now is actually try to force shield right here. Split the Marines kind of in half if you can, but don't let them run back down. So that was a pretty bad force shield actually. So since you have some Zealots already, you know, just use them to your advantage. Get these Marines pinned against the force field. And also, don't be afraid of using your force field energy, because you know, it's better to not die than have force field energy for the Warp Prism drop. And at this point, he's still trying to break up this ramp because he hasn't seen too many units at all. And now that your Colossus is out, what you really want to do, if you only see Marines, is get it behind their army. You know, walk down the cliff of the ramp or whatever, and get behind their army. That way they can't escape, because this Colossus can just mow through the Marines. And since he sees the Colossus, he's going to start to back out now. And because I've cleaned that up, I'm going to go ahead and send the Warp Prism out to do my cool Warp Prism drop. And if we see what our opponent is doing, now that he knows Colossus are on the field, he's going to throw down 2 more bunkers. 3 bunkers is basically the number that the Terran player needs. And if you see 3 or more bunkers, I think I've said this before, but just don't push up that ramp because it'll be very difficult to break your opponent, I should say. And now that I've got 2 Colossus on the field, I've expanded. And that is a little bit of a late expansion just because of the pressure that my opponent put on me. And all I'm doing right here is just trying to distract him. And you can even see he's pulled out a ton of SCVs. And usually when you do go for this little poke in, you also want to do the drop at the same time. So I think actually what I was doing right there was trying to see if I can win the game. So I was just testing this front wall to see if I could go up there and win. But I realized I can't, so at this point, this is when you want to distract and do your little drop thing going down. We can see our opponent is just now getting a starport, nearing the 10-minute mark, and that's pretty standard, basic, given that he did this marine pressure. He had really good minimap awareness here, so I wasn't able to really trap too many workers. And you can see I'm still poking at the front, trying to see if he pulls away a lot of units or not. And he only pulled away 2 Marines, which is actually a little weird. So I'm going to stay here because I don't see too many Marines, and it's just really important to keep these sentries alive. I mean, let your Zealots fight and trade with the SCVs, because if we look at the units lost, despite the perfect mini-map awareness, he still lost 10 workers. So you can see that Zealots, even while getting killed by Marines, can still kill a good amount of SCVs, and that was definitely worth it on my end. And to follow up this build, I'm still on these 2 gates and 1 robo. You can really just afford to produce off that and get these 2 gas as early as you can. Now, you do want a few probes here before you just throw down 2 gas. So you can either get like 8 probes mining and then 2 gas, or you can do like a gas, get a few probes, a gas. Not a big deal there either way, so don't worry too much about that. And then obviously transfer a couple workers, because this is a little bit, I mean, that's sort of the saturation you want, but when you have a second base up, you do want to saturate that as well. Now, in this attack, it is once again important to keep these sentries alive, but I guess I'm doing a decent job of that. Force fields, not too great, actually hurting myself, because the Zealots aren't doing anything. A little bit of Warp Prism Micro here for the Colossus. You might as well use the Warp Prism since you have it, so that's all I'm doing. And now I forgot to bring up the units lost tab, but I was in the lead before this attack, and after this attack, I believe our opponent is actually going to be in the lead. It's actually pretty much tied up at this stage of the game. He's a little bit in the lead, granted. So you just really want to be certain before you poke up here to attack that your opponent isn't going to have too much to get the advantage after that attack. Because if your opponent can win this battle, and since he's got these bunkers here, it's going to go in his favor. You know, there's really no other way around that. So you want to be certain about attacking before you just run up there. And nice little juke dancing by our Colossus. Now, this is something I almost never do in this matchup, and because I have yet to see any Vikings, I decided to get Thermal Lance, and I'm going to keep on producing Colossus simply because I don't see any Vikings. Now, since our opponent is going to be starting to drop, I just want to show you that I've lost 2 workers this game, so here comes his first drop. And when you against Terran in the mid game, you know, after the 11-minute mark, you should expect drops, unless they're going mech, even though they can still Hellion drop. So real quickly, I just want to mention there's 2 ways you can position your army. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the drop right now. 2 ways you can position your army. You can either leave units here and at your front, or you can, what I like to do is actually just leave my whole army in between the 2 bases. And that way you can see my response time was pretty quick. Workers lost was only 4, and he was leading the units lost before this, and he actually still is, but I pushed back the drop. That's actually pretty good. So if you can lose that little after a drop, that is pretty successful in my mind. And note, I still have this Warp Prism alive. If you still have the Warp Prism, and since you do want to add on a few more gateways at this point, actually you really want to, once you pull back off your contain, you really want to have more gateways at home. So if you still have your Warp Prism alive, just, go ahead and harass. Just put it into Warp Prism mode, send in a couple Zealots, and run away. You should be expecting Vikings to be on the field, but still it's a good harassment sort of strategy. Now, what our opponent here did was run by with a few Marauders from the front and then drop me in the back. I knew exactly what he was trying to do from this, but it's still not easy to stop. And if we look at the workers killed, he's killed a lot more after that. Actually, 13 more workers, and it's going to put him in the lead. And in the units tab, we can see that I am behind now. But you're sort of just going to know the different harassment types that a Terran's going to throw at you. At any point, you've got to be aware that he can just run everything up the front gate and kill you right away. So that's why you don't want to just purely right out defend against all dropping lanes, because if they do decide to just run up right up the gut, they can snipe a Nexus and run away, and then they win, pretty much. So that's why you don't want to just spread your army out all over the place. At the same time, though, they can do two-pronged drops where they drop here, and maybe even run some units up. So you got to be careful about that. But I still am sensing that he doesn't have a large amount of Vikings. So if we look at the army supply real quick, we can see that I am well ahead despite the little bit of drop harassment that he's had. And I don't believe he's going for a third command center, so that's not like it's giving me an advantage in the economic game. But you can see with all this harassment that I've done, and by having this Colossus support to deny his drops, despite the earlier expo for our opponent, actually the much earlier expo, I'm still able to crush this army because I have a good amount of sentries to force fields, and I have a good amount of stalkers to snipe down the Vikings as need be. Now, I'm going to go into more detail in the next two games, but I figured I just want to show you a very simple response if you don't see a lot of Vikings from your opponent. When you're first setting up a contain over here, just keep making for Colossus until you see a large amount of Vikings, and then hopefully he'll overproduce Vikings and you can just start making Immortals out of your Robo. A very important component to this build, though, is getting sentries. Regardless of whether you continue to build Colossus or not, you need sentries. That's why you need the early gas here. And whether or not you go to Forge is totally your call. It basically, the way I judge it is if I'm in the lead after the first push, then I'll go to Forge. If I'm not in the lead, or if it's like a tie game, then I'll opt to get 5 or 6 gateways and only 1 Forge. So it's truly your call. And as you can see, I just want to end this quickly right now. I have 5 warp gates and a Robo off 2 base. You just do not need all that much production for this build order. So anyway, we'll get into more detail in the next 2 games. Hope you guys enjoy this. As always, good luck on ladder, and Primetime signing out. So I'll see you guys next time.